Hello and welcome to Ephemera. I am fantasy author KT Brisky.
And I'm editor Jen R. Albert. We hope you're enjoying our theme music courtesy of Alex White. Welcome to anybody joining us for the first time, and welcome back to those of you who have visited our virtual home before. For those who are new, Ephemera is an award-nominated reading series chaired by KT and myself.
Pre-COVID, we held events in the Glad Day Bookshop. And we are thrilled that we can enjoy continued merriment with you right here on YouTube. And we would like to begin tonight by acknowledging that the land on which I live and work is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee and Wendat peoples, and is now home to many First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples. This land is covered under Treaty 13 and is part of the Dish with One Spoon.
And the land on which I live and work is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas, and is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. Additionally, this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation.
As many of you know, today is the first day of winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. It's the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. It's a threshold time, a good time to listen to the darkness and welcome what guests may come. Watching the dwindling of the year, my thoughts drift to the interplay between light and dark. Some light first. The COP15 Biodiversity Summit was recently held on the traditional territory of the Kanyenkeha, land that many here now call Montreal. As we've said before, Indigenous peoples comprise about 5% of the world's population and steward about 80% of its biodiversity. Indigenous leadership, knowledge-keeping, and expertise are critical to climate action and justice. That fact seems increasingly understood, recognized, celebrated. Climate justice, land back, Indigenous stewardship of the land and waters we share, and the diverse living beings with whom we share them, these are all aspects of reconciliation, a light by which we can start to glimpse the better world that is possible. Yet I think a recent CBC headline summarizes the state of things aptly. Indigenous peoples recognized as leaders at Biodiversity Summit, but not equals in negotiations. Even as we affirm the light, there is still a lot of darkness. So what do we do? I think we need to turn to each other. We need community action, we need local initiatives, and we need intentional, ongoing action to shift symbolic signaling to systemic change. But we also need to continue to shed light on the darkness of our colonial past and unjust present. Settlers, individually and institutionally, cannot continue to hide in the shadows of empty platitudes and emptier promises. If you want to spark some ideas for yourself, I highly recommend a recent article by Douglas Sanderson, Amo Benashi, Pritchard Wilson Chair in Law and Public Policy at the University of Toronto Faculty of Law. I will drop a link to that article in the YouTube chat. And after today, the days will continue to lengthen no matter what we humans do. But the light of reconciliation will only shine by our collective, unswerving action, empathy, and commitment. Thank you. Oh, over to you, Jen. I was like, don't mute, don't mute.
Unmuting. I don't know how this is still a thing. Well, thanks, Katie. I'll drop a link to that Katie mentioned in the chat. Well, yeah, it's wonderful that Ephemera's calendar and the solar calendar lined up like this. What better way to spend the longest night of the year than listening to some amazing fiction and some music with everybody here.
Indeed. And the winter solstice does have a long history of being associated with storytelling and the supernatural, ghosts, and otherworldly visitors.
I am sensing a ripple in the fabric of the world.
I guess we will just have to wait and see. But we certainly have some fantastic guests here tonight, and I'm pleased to welcome our first reader. Vida Cruz Borja is a Filipina fantasy and science fiction writer, editor, artist, and con runner. Her short fiction and essays have been published in F&SF, Fantasy, Strange Horizons, Podcastle, Expanded Horizons, and various anthologies. She won the 2022 Ignite Award for Best Creative Nonfiction for We Are the Mountain, a look at the inactive protagonist, which will be republished in Letters to a Writer of Color in spring 2023. She is the author of 2 illustrated fantasy short story collections, Beyond the Line of Trees, out in 2019, and Song of the Mango and Other New Myths, 2022. Welcome, Vida. Thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that intro. This is my first time here in Ephemera, and shall I just get to it? Okay, so I will be reading from my new book, and the story is called How the Jungle Got Its Spirit Guardian. I'm gonna give you some background first before I dive right into it, because the Merriment is smack dab in the middle of the story. So the premise is there is a boy and a girl, and they live in a society with very strict gender roles. And by circumstance, they're forced to work with each other. And in so doing, they secretly decide to do each other's gender roles. And this plays out over the years. But also they're growing up and they're starting to see each other differently. And in the section I'm about to read, the girl is coming of age and there is supposed to be a big party, Merriment. Right. In the 3 months following Daza and Tenu's endeavor in the jungle, growth in and around Taz grew sparse. The vegetation did not yield even a fourth of the bounty from the previous year. Seeds did not sprout, saplings withered, trees died. There were no beasts to hunt for many miles, and the river fish disappeared altogether. In the 3rd month, Tenu bled for the first time. Most people, who long whispered and gossiped about her among themselves, did not want her to cook the traditional feast for the village. And not only for fears of further depleting the supply of food. Her blooming so late raised too many intricate theological questions for the priests and encouraged too much of the unthinkable among the youth. But the heart of En settled the matter by saying, En loves even the most unwanted of his children, and that was that. Early one morning, 3 days after Tenu's bleeding ended, Daza told his mother Yahin he was going out hunting. He returned before the break of dawn the following day, utterly exhausted. But he brushed away Yahin's fretting, reasoning he had searched far and wide for a new place to hunt. He bore with him the body of a bony water buffalo, yes, but he also smelled faintly of garlic, for he had not been as thorough in his washing in his hurry. He avoided further questioning by sleeping the day away. At dusk, both young and old arrived at the ball court. Curiosities piqued. Even Idra, Tenu's father, had consented to be born on a pallet of bamboo to watch the ceremony. Spits and plates and bowls laden with roasted lamb, maize bread, soups brimming with potatoes and leeks, and other small wonders dotted the court, while a whirling bonfire cast a luminous glare all around. The villagers of Toss stared at the food and at each other, astonished. Perhaps Sadar could live on in her wayward daughter after all. And just then, Tenu emerged from the temple of En. She was dressed in gold beads and woven llama wool, and she also had feathers dyed the yellow of ripe maize for Vaya, the black of a pum's fur for Urza, and the indigo of the night sky for En, and their 3 gods. And she carried her hunting drums, and her face, streaked red with paint from crushed berries, was resolute. She circled the court, throwing light dustings of salt on each dish, following the path of the sun from the east, and when she ended at the temple steps, the villagers readied themselves to partake of the feast. But then, Tanu sat before the temple steps and began a rising beat on her drums. Before anyone could protest the break in tradition, a song of pure joy wound its way from her red mouth. She sang of maize bursting from the earth, children from their mothers, stars from suns, and somehow the words were in the mouths of each and every one of the inhabitants of Tosk. The drum rhythm echoed in each heart and bade them stand and play their instruments or dance all across the stones. Joyfully, the villagers obeyed the dictates of the song. Even her father could feel faint twitches in his legs as he clapped his hands and beat his palate to the music, laughing and crying all at once. But Yahin watched the festivities at the edge of the court, her heart closed off. She had tasted the food and disbelieved the incredible flavors drenching her tongue. She dismissed also the cornucopia of memories flooding her mind, for she was the sort of person that kept alive only one kind of memory. Her jealousy charred her from the inside until, frustrated, she stomped back into her hut. Tanu let her drum hang from its cord around her neck and threaded her way through the singing, dancing crowd. If someone danced with her, she obliged, her rhythm unbroken. She spied Daza, dancing somewhere at the edge of the court, his skin transformed to a burnished bronze by firelight, the emerging moon bestowing a halo on his charcoal hair. She spun, jumped, clapped, and skipped her way toward him, reveling in her song, not caring who saw where she went or to whom. Tracking her amid the crowd, Daza caught utter joy in her face, illumined by firelight. She had the grace of a panther, the lightness of a breeze, and she could command her way through the crowd like a river. His heart stumbled over a beat when he saw that the trajectory of her dance would end before him. He did not have time to point out that he was a poor dancer, for she grabbed his hand and pulled him into her orbit the way sun pulls at planets. And, as he staggered forward just as she arrived, their lips touching briefly, he realized neither of them cared if he danced poorly. Before they set out to hunt the next morning, Tenu offered Daza a flat piece of oddly colored maize bread that she had soaked and ground herself, much to his surprise. She never once lifted a finger to help him in the cooking all these years. Reluctant, Daza bit it. Though it was a little tough to chew, he had to keep it from slipping from his fingers. There was a silent song in the bread, and it swept over him the moment his teeth made contact. It was how he came to know that Tenu loved him in her own quiet, steadfast way, ever since she watched him prepare their first meal together. His joy and gratitude knew no bounds, save the plains, dips, and rises of her hand, and as he pressed his lips to it again and again, and later the contours of her lithe, slim body. Later, Tenu arrived at Daza's family's hut with an offering of 6 doves bound at the legs. After sitting across the fire pit from Yahin with no preamble, she asked the herbalist permission to marry Daza. An unsettling silence followed. "You may have charmed all of Tosk with your singing," said Yahin. "But I wonder, daughter of Sadar, how could someone of your upbringing, of your running wild with the birds and the beasts and the men in the jungle, and of your disdain of the clay pot, which was no secret, how could you have possibly achieved all 20 of those concoctions without help? How could you achieve all that?" And here she bestowed on Tenu a nasty smile. "Without having stolen a few things here and there. I have counted the herbs in my jars and the fruits in my store, and I find I cannot account for a surprising amount of salt, pepper, garlic, oregano, and Vaya knows what else." Tanu said nothing, and Yahin smiled wider. "You may be Sadar's daughter, but I am Daza's mother, and I feel in my very bones that you have not a kernel of her gift. And it is I whom the women look to now, little girl. Even you, with your vulgar upbringing, shall not be exempt from our laws. 7 days from now, see if you can win Daza from me by making meals of his catch in your trials number 3. "Has some other maiden asked for his hand?" asked Tanu. "Whom is it I should best?" Yahin resembled a tiger in the way her smile bared her teeth. "My daughters and I." And there, that's the end of my excerpt.
I can't find the mute button. I'm too excited. Oh my goodness, there were so many wonderful moments in there. I loved that line of, it didn't matter that he danced poorly. And I'm like, I've been there. And also, Vida, sorry, can we see the cover one more time?
Oh, right.
Because it's super lovely.
So pretty.
Wait, I do not know why
Oh
my
no,
video stopped. Hold on.
it was too awesome.
Okay.
Oh, there we
Here
go.
we go.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's lovely. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Blush. Just like the worlds and the writing. Lovely.
Yeah, cool. Wow, thank you very much, Vida. What a way to start the night. And I was also thinking what is associated with the winter solstice and brings me a lot of merriment.
What's that?
Bones.
Bones.
Yes.
You didn't just make that up for a story?
No, it's a real thing. The Marilud is a Welsh tradition. It's a skeleton horse that goes from house to house, engaging in battles of improvised song and rhyme with the occupants until they all head inside for food and drink, or merriment, you might say.
So apropos for tonight, I feel like if Prancy would approve, say if the Mary Lud were to join us tonight, I wonder what types of songs it would sing. Would it sing about Prancy or Plantington III? Would it sing about the solstice and the holidays?
It's hard to say. Hey, audience, if we were to enter an improv song contest with a skeleton horse, or perhaps its skeleton dear cousin, what topics would you want us to sing about, theoretically? You can drop your prompts and suggestions in the chat.
Just theoretically. And while you do, I will introduce our performer for tonight, who will be doing this perhaps with us. Kari. Kari Maaren is a writer, a cartoonist. Kari Maaren is a writer, cartoonist, musician, and academic whose first novel, the YA fantasy Weave a Circle Round, was published by Tor Books in 2017. It tied for the 2018 Copper Cylinder Award and was a finalist for the Andre Norton Award for Young Adult Science Fiction and Fantasy, and was shortlisted for the Sunburst Award. Kari has a completed webcomic, West of Bathurst, and an active one, which is the multi-Aurora winning It Never Rains, and has produced 2 independent albums, Beowulf Pulled My Arm Off and Everybody Hates Elves. She lives in Toronto with 2 many musical instruments and an astounding number of books. Welcome. What is that?
I've come for this improvised song contest with my antler and my mystery.
Oh my gosh.
So here's what's going to happen. Kari, I challenge you to a song contest. We will receive prompts from the audience, and we will each take a turn making a song as some midwinter merriment. Does this sound acceptable to you?
Define acceptable, but sure.
Acceptable enough, an acceptable amount of
We have a
acceptability.
sure.
Consensus, we're Canadian, after all.
Excellent. So then I believe we need a prompt.
I shall start us off until we get some wonderful chat prompts. So for those of you who were not here last month, we have a new friend, Kevin Kelp, they, them, who is a fanged sea creature from the deep. So this is their first official merry gathering together with us, and we don't know a lot about Kevin yet, so maybe we can learn a few things about them through song.
The best medium for learning. Kari, would you like to go first or second?
I'll let Prancy go first. I think Prancy has a lot to sing about tonight.
I mean, probably. Yes, I will sing a song about Kevin Kelp. Kevin Kelp, you are my friend, coming from the sea so deep, flashing fangs and shining scales. Come and stay with here and my friends, Kevin Kelp. Should I keep going? I'll go again. Kevin Kelp, you are so cool, from the ocean's deepest bottom. You have come with fangs so sharp, and I know we will be awesome, Kevin Kelp. I did 2 verses. I think that is sufficient.
That's absolutely sufficient.
Sure.
Kari?
Okay, well, I have to follow a skeleton deer with 1 antler, which is really difficult, but
I lost the other one
yes,
in the woods.
it is the rut right now, so I can understand why that might happen. So, let's see. Kevin Kelp, writing really bad reviews on Yelp. He's really mean to everyone. But that's just because Kevin is really... I don't write this very well. Oh hell, I've lost my song. I don't know quite what's gone wrong, but Kevin Kelp, I wish that he could help me, but I think he's abandoned me now. 'Cause Kevin's really mean to everyone. He finds it really kind of fun. I think we should teach him a lesson about how to be a better person over the course of the next season, which is probably going to last a year, which is how it works on Ephemera. And he'll go through this arc and he'll learn things and he'll change and become a better person. And it will be a whole thing. And we'll all learn and cry together with Kevin Kelp.
I think Kari won the first round.
I love that for us and for Kevin.
I love that you've also set up a whole plot line for us to follow
Yep.
over the next year.
Over the next year.
Yes,
Thankfully,
believe me, we
funded.
will return to repeatedly. Yes, okay, well, point to Kari in this contest.
Well, we've got a lot of great prompts in chat. One I am particularly fond of here is reindeer pettiness.
Okay,
which
but
we've heard about-
pettiness or prettiness? Can
Oh,
we?
it says pettiness. You can also put prettiness in there. I think that's what it means. You know, like all of the other reindeer.
Oh yes,
kind of
yes. Being mean
jerkish,
to
apparently
Rudolph.
like Kevin Kelp.
I see, and Jordan has just added here that reindeer might be petty because they are pretty.
They're very superior like that. So are we going the same order, opposite order?
Up to the winner, I think.
I'll go first this time just to take some of the pressure off Prancy. And then
Okay.
Prancy
I'll
can
put my antler down. It's very heavy.
Olive is an asshole, an asshole, an asshole. Olive is an asshole, and Rudolph is sad. Why is Olive so mean to Rudolph? She's really bad. Olive is an asshole, an asshole, an asshole. Olive is an asshole, and we don't care. Why can't she just let him be what he is? Why Rudolph is I'm so bad at this. I'm seriously not very good at this, but Olive is an asshole, an asshole, an asshole. Olive is an asshole. Why can she not treat him right? Christmas night and Santa flies on his sleigh. I wish that I could sing a song I'd written a year ago instead of doing this, because this is really hard. But Olive is an asshole, an asshole, an asshole. Olive is an asshole, and Rudolph is sad.
Huzzah!
So sorry.
I like that even the tune was petty.
It was.
It's
was
apparently a theme.
Snarky little tune.
I love it.
You know what? I was gonna maybe do this for finale, but I think that we need to just have a complete change of tone. I had wanted to chant something in this contest, and I think this might be the time. There are those who said unto me, are not reindeer the pettiest of creatures? And I said to them, yea, it is so, for they were mean to Rudolph of the red nose. And then they said unto me, but why are the reindeer petty? And my friend did reply, because they are so pretty, and it makes them superior in their hearts. And then the reindeer did laugh, and frolic about with glee. But lo, Rudolph was alone. He was not invited to play in the reindeer games, and so this made him very sad. Can anyone do anything? Said I to Santa Claus. No, he said, no, ho, 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 ho. The end of my chant.
Oh, those were both very good.
I think we have time for one more.
All right, we'll give this point to KT, and we'll do one more.
Ooh, a tiebreaker one.
Yes, and we have a new listener watcher.
Also, it's Prancy.
Yes, stalking horses. Prancy. It's Prancy. I'm sorry. Who has given us a birds prompt. There are Christmas bird songs all over the place. So go wild with the bird song. Who would like to go first? Prancy, you can decide.
I mean, Kari went first last time, so I can go first this time. Especially because I know birds are a subject very close to Kari's heart. So I will give her an extra minute to think about all of the wonderful things she can sing about birds. Ahem. I think birds are very neat, and so does my cat. He likes to sit in the window, lick his lips, and that is that. He won't chase them, for he lives inside where he can't hunt and play. That is good for all the birds, for he'd eat them every day. Again, I can keep going. I'll do a second verse. That one was short. Okay. Birds are lovely, they fly fleetly, and so they catch my cat's eye. As they dip and swerve so lightly, he wants to bake them in a pie. Little Guinness, you can't eat them, they're our friends to watch with joy. And so instead I give to him a small bird-shaped little toy.
That worked out really well.
Amazing.
It sure did. All right. Over to you, Kari.
I can't follow that one. All right. Let's see. Birds are jerks. Birds are assholes. They will yell at you all day, and you know what they will say. Fuck you, fuck me, that's all. 'Cause birds are jerks. I love them so, because they're bastards. Without birds, the world would be sadder, but also full of fewer insults, and we would have less to talk about when we wanted to be jerks. 'Cause birds are jerks. Birds are jerks. Apparently the answer was do it slower, then it works better.
I mean, I think there is no question. I think that round goes to you. And that you are the winner of our improvised midwinter song contest.
Congratulations!
So I tip my antler to you.
There was so much swearing in that one. So much.
But the swears were merriment. The swears were part of what made us merry.
Merry Swearmas.
A well-won contest. Thank you very much. Again, I tip my antler, and until next year, I am away.
Bye. Well, that was certainly completely unexpected. Following that, I am pleased to introduce our next reader, Natalia Theodoridou, is joining us through the magic of time travel and technology because he is overseas and has it would be very late. And he has published over 100 short stories, most of them dark and queer, in magazines such as Strange Horizons, Uncanny, Clarkesworld, Knightsmere, and FNSF, among others. He won the 2018 World Fantasy Award for short fiction and was a finalist for the Nebula Award for game writing with his first choice of games project, Rent a Vice. Natalia holds a PhD in media from the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, and is a Clarion West graduate. He was born in Greece and has roots in Russia, Georgia, and Turkey. Just give me 1 second here. I'm going to share a thing so that you can hear Natalia read. Hopefully the sound. Yeah, there's the sound. Okay.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I'm going to read from the beginning of a novelette, The Prince of Salt and the Ocean's Bargain, which was published in Uncanny magazine in September 2022. Here we go. There's a story that sounds completely fantastic, and yet it is true. It happened here and in the neighboring lands. It goes like this. Once upon a time, there was an ocean deep and cold. And in the ocean, there was salt. For a long time, salt did not know itself to exist. But then, beneath a wave, under a dark and bitter brew of the sea, it stirred. Why, it hardly knew, yet for the first time, salt found itself wanting. It had no body, no arms and legs, no spine or skull, no eyes or mouth. But it knew it wanted, and what it wanted was to live. And so, in a rare, still moment of the sea, salt reached out. It found a single drop of water inside all the vast unbearable water, and it said, I want. And then the ocean, which was in that drop, just as it is in all of the water, granted salt's wish. The ocean said there was a price, and that one day that price would have to be paid. Did salt understand what that meant? The young thing asks, interrupting me. Hush, child. Stories are fragile things. They break so easily. So salt then. His body was vast first, and then narrow and marrowed and enclosed in lean muscle and tender skin. He lay on dry sand, ashore, his new mind informed him in its new language. Foam lapped at his bare feet. He possessed hair now, and arms to take with and touch with, and eyes and ears, and a tongue and a mouth, and a hunger to live, and a heart to do it with. Above, an expanse yawned inconceivable, mind-shattering, the sky. In it, the sun. He knew the sun. His stomach rumbled, and his throat prickled, and his limbs screamed with exhaustion, but these were all things he knew not how to appease, or that he could. So he simply assumed them to be the facts that prove salt was, for now, alive. Salt remained on that beach for hours, his skin baking under the sun until sunset, then growing cold in the night, then baking again in the morning, until the sun dipped below the horizon once more. His skin cooled in the ocean breeze and stung in the night air. His third day, he discovered movement. He wiggled his toes, stretched his shoulders, and counted his fingers on his hand. Then he ran his palm across the length of his skin. He discovered waves and grooves, creases and caves, bone ridges and hooks that reminded him of the depths of the ocean. This is how the girl Marietta found him, naked and touching himself in the way of babies, not men. And that was enough for her to get over whatever sense of shame rouged her cheeks for a moment. And it was a brief moment, because Marietta was no stranger to the joys of bodies, and had little patience for the parched teachings of religious men who paid so much coin to paint their visions of hell on the whitewashed walls of their churches when people starved on the streets just beyond. Her curiosity won this time, as it always won, and it was never much of a fight either, truth be told. She nudged the man with her foot first to make sure he didn't bite, then spoke to him in the soft voice she used with feral children and dogs. "Do you need help, mister?" She thought he must be shipwrecked, shaken free of the sea by the storm that had raged over them the night before. But then again, that wouldn't explain why he was so very naked. Perhaps he'd been mistreated somehow then, and the thought made Marietta simultaneously want to punch whoever hurt him and have this man wrapped in the softest cloth she could find. She nudged the man again, having run out of ways to make sense of the situation. "Can you speak?" The man looked at her and laughed, but she didn't feel mocked, for it was the laughter of a creature that had suddenly discovered it can be pleased, and that the world is a place of great joy. "You're beautiful," he said. His words sounded strange, unaffected, and new. "What are you?" Marietta straightened, stood, and faced the man with the orange-colored sky behind her. She tilted her head just so, to keep the sun from blinding him, but also to let the light halo her black hair as on the stained windows in the house of God. "I am a woman," she said. "I am Marietta." Of course she took him home. She would never have left him there on the beach. It didn't matter if he were but a drunkard who lost his clothes in a bad gamble and passed out by the surf, though she was certain that's not at all who he was. She wrapped him with her overcoat, and he followed her in silence, watching her through wide eyes, the corners of his mouth turned up the slightest. He did have a kind of beauty to him, Marietta found, though he seemed somehow unfinished. His skin too smooth, his like marble before the artist's chisel had made its mark. His hair was thick, but his face had no beard, nor had he any other hair on his body. No, his beauty had little to do with the features of his face or the angles of his bones, and more with the way he walked as if he were liquid, the way his fingers moved as if perpetually underwater, and his eyes showed, if you looked at them under the right light, the strange reflections of the ocean. The sun was setting when they reached her cottage. At the door, he stopped. Her home was a small shack on the outskirts of the town, barely a roof and a door and a window and a bed with a mattress filled with straw, but it might as well have been a palace. That's how fascinated the man was. The neighbors were poor, some worse off than Marietta herself, others a notch better, but none of them ever bat an eye at newcomers, no matter how out of place they looked. She didn't have much to give him, but everything she had, she did. She had only the clothes she wore herself, and that most men wouldn't dare put on, but he did not seem to mind at all. So she clothed him in her best, her single satin dress. It's blue frightening to him at first, but the texture of it on his skin so pleasant he quickly recovered. She fed him stale bread and butter that he stuffed into his mouth, and moaned so hard she had to muzzle him for fear of the neighbors getting the wrong idea, or maybe the right one, though it was still early for that. She gave him her sweetest wine, which was not very sweet at all, and yet he downed it with big, desperate gulps and said more. He hid nothing from her. He told her of his birth, which was no birth at all, and of before. He told her about the ocean, the cold, sheer vastness of it, how it never ended and there was no containing it. He told her how he was dissolved in everything, separate but also not, how he swelled with water, how the pressure and the deep currents fell to his non-body, how he spoke a certain language of the deep but had no tongue, no throat, and how, when he said I, it was not quite right. She listened intently, her eyes sparkling and wide. She seemed to him at once like the creatures he knew all too well before becoming what he now was, simple and round and open, with a beating heart and a thirst for love and living, but also different, more complicated for all her 4 folds of skin, her bones and hair. He reached out to touch her, and she let him, palms open. He studied the lines there for a long time, and then he carried on talking. She wanted to understand it all. She was silent when he needed silence and asked questions when he needed words. He also told her of the first time he felt anything and how that feeling was one he had no word for. Was it a wanting? She tried. A curiosity? A need? But no word fit perfectly, so he told her instead of the way in which time had no meaning until he had breath. He told her, finally, of his bargain, his debt to the ocean, the lover's heart, the limited time it bought him. Marietta clutched her own heart then, but whether she truly believed him, no one will ever know, because she couldn't quite decide herself. The sun had long since set when they finished talking, and they lay together on the straw mattress, his skin pressed against hers, still cold, but with an unfamiliar warmth to it now. She ran her fingers through his hair and he sighed, his face pressed into her neck, his arm around her waist. He kept his eyes open, watching, even as sleep crept in. Did you dream? The young thing asks. Does soul dream? Does sand dream of the stone it once was? Does the ocean remember all the lovers lost at sea? He did, I say, but I don't know what. We must give you a name, Marietta declared in the morning. And so they called him Salt, because that's what he was, but also Fellow, because he always yearned and always hungered without cease. Marietta took him to her bed for more than sleeping, of course. She showed him what it was that humans could do with their bodies and each other's, and he turned out to be a better lover than any she'd had before. Patient one, too, because despite his newfound love for breathing, his grasp of time was tentative at best. For days he could lie there, wrapped and shook by the feeling of a fly's legs brushing his skin, the fuzzy taste of a peach, or the shape of the dimples on Marietta's back. He wanted to experience everything, even as he wondered about the price each of these treasures would demand of him one day. Marietta took him out to dance and drink and eat, and meet her friends and lovers, some of whom they brought back home with them. On such nights, Salt seemed more interested in the feeling of his own body than the bodies of others, but he would shut his eyes and listen to their sighs and moans and words. He kissed their eyelids and their stomachs and their mouths. It was the closest he'd felt to what he was before. He found them all beautiful, the most beautiful, their crooked backs, their perfect noses and shining eyes, their silky hair, their scarred faces, their skinny legs and sharp bones, their curves of fat. He loved them all. It was too much for him sometimes, but he never dreamed of stopping, of stepping back, of loving less. And I'm going to stop here, and you're welcome to read the rest at Uncanny Magazine. Thank you again so much for having me.
Again, I'm too excited to find the unmute button. I wish he was here so I could just have lots of feelings. But our live streams do live on YouTube following the event. So here's a time travel flail of excitement. That was so lovely.
So beautiful.
I just love the way Natalia's writing just handles such complex, nuanced emotions so very well. Like, for me, it's always just a masterclass in that.
Yeah, every time I read one of his stories.
Yeah.
I'm in love with it.
So, time travel flailing of excitement into the future. And speaking of time, you know what is very strange and hard to believe? There are only 10 days left in this year. And really, I would even say 9, since today is nearly over.
Yeah, the end of the year certainly feels like a doorway. Whether things are coming in, like our singing skeleton friend, or we're just passing through. Katie, what are you excited for? And audience, what are you excited for in 2023, in the next year?
Yeah, do you have stories, games, novels coming out in the new year? Are you planning to attend any cons or events? Tell us what awaits you on the other side of the door. Let's hype each other up a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm very pleased to present our final reader tonight. Jordan Kurella is a trans and disabled author who has lived all over the world, including Moscow and Manhattan. In his past lives, he was a photographer, radio DJ, and social worker. His work can be found in Apex, Glitter and Ashes, and Strange Horizons. His novella, I Never Liked You Anyway, and short story collection, When I Was Lost, are both in stores. Jordan lives in Ohio with his perfect service dog and perfectly serviceable cat. Welcome, Jordan. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to read from the novella I Never Liked You Anyway, which currently looks like this, which might not look like this for very long. So that's also a time travel flail. So I'm reading the, can you hear me okay? So just checking. Okay. So I'm reading the first and third chapters, not the second chapter. The novella swaps between points of view. It's called I Never Liked You Anyway, or The Tale of Eurydice and Orpheus, as told by one god and one musician. So starting off with the first chapter. Afterlife, present day. At 3 o'clock, standard death time, Eurydice must attend mandatory Threads of Fate sewing lessons. Eurydice hates them. Sewing fate should be interesting, but she is awful at it. At first, Eurydice must measure out the appropriate amount of time weighted by deeds. This is tricky. Eurydice has questions about deeds, and which deeds are good deeds, and which deeds are bad deeds, and which deeds are good and bad only by perspective. Eurydice asks a lot of questions. It should come as no surprise that Eurydice is the sort to ask questions, the sort that get her in trouble. After all, it is how she got into the afterlife. Eurydice is a terribly curious woman who went through life making bad decisions because truly one only lives once, and projecting oneself onto the first available opportunity is a decision after all. Sometimes Eurydice asks so many questions that the Threads of Fate instructor must call a short break due to a feigned headache. They require a cup of coffee. In these periods, Eurydice has time to speak to her best friend, Penelope. These conversations and these breaks sometimes go like this. Hey, friend, Penelope says. She is smiling, yet concerned. Penelope is often smiling, yet concerned. Hey, Eurydice says back. What have you got going on after this? I've got creating baking disasters at 5, Eurydice says. Oh, of course, yes. Controlled baking chaos, Penelope says, and she nods the nod as one who knows something Eurydice doesn't. She has the posture of someone who knows Eurydice doesn't. Her weaver's fingers are curled under her angled chin, brown skin still keeping a tan complexion, even as in death. Her black hair remains thick today and is drawn half back from her face. But even without the posture, Penelope always knows something Eurydice doesn't. This is on account of being Penelope and on account of how she pays attention, and Eurydice does not. Eurydice was habitually terrible at paying attention. Then Penelope says, I didn't pick that particular elective. Eurydice says, which one? The baking one, Penelope smiles. I chose the other one. Other one? Eurydice asks, parroting Penelope back at Penelope. Yes, Penelope says, I chose hauntings. The word has weight. So much weight, in fact, that Eurydice makes the motion to take a breath, except that pleasure has been stolen from her. The sort of people who take classes that are called hauntings and controlled baking disasters are, of course, learning to be better ghosts. Oh, Eurydice says, exactly like a ghost. Very good, Eurydice. At 5 o'clock, during controlled baking disasters, Eurydice once again could not make her particular baker destroy their concoction. As usual, her baker's project came out perfect. Perfecter than perfect. As her instructor said every time, Eurydice, you are simply not the sort to be in this class. This is not news to Eurydice. Eurydice had always not been the sort to be anywhere. She was not the sort to be with Orpheus. Aristaeus proved that. She was not the sort to protect Andy. Instead, Andy had to protect her. Eurydice doesn't know what sort of woman or ghost or person she is anymore. In life and in death, she remains far too good to cause chaos and far too much of a disaster to make any sense of being good, which is why at 6 o'clock, Eurydice drops controlled baking disasters and transfers to hauntings, partly because of Penelope and partly because there's a particular person whose life she wants to make a particular hell. I think we both know who. His name starts with Or and ends with Phoeus. Going on to chapter 3, Afterlife, present day. Eurydice has a best friend in the afterlife, Penelope. Eurydice is also, like all other souls, able to eat things in the afterlife. Currently, she's having baklava and licking the honey off her fingers the way young people sometimes do. Penelope is sitting with her ghostly fingertips on a cup of just right temperature cardamom tea and looking off onto the gray on gray horizon. That said, there's something to be said about both best friends and baklava. Having neither is truly a crime. The afterlife should be pleasant, after all, as it is simply a stopgap before the eternal boredom of constant reincarnation until the soul eventually gets their proverbial fates in a row and can move beyond. The afterlife is pleasant, as it's designed to be, except for the classes, which are a litmus test. As if a soul can manage to fate, ruin cakes, or haunt the unhauntable, a soul can move beyond. If they cannot, they're doomed to reincarnation. If a soul can do neither, well, that's Sisyphean tragedy, I guess. As for Eurydice and Penelope, their friendship is born of convenience, the way that many short, quick, doomed friendships are. It is a friendship of might as well do this rather than the proverbial ride or die, as they are both already dead and they both are aware of the temporary nature of their situation. Yet they both need one another in their ways. They have so much in common, each of them with issues with men, starting with O, Orpheus, and Odysseus, respectively. Before Penelope died, she enjoyed some time alone with neither Telemachus nor a suitor. She tossed her late husband to the waves and wove him into her narrative like a man forgotten and lost to time, a legend from long ago rather than a man whom everyone remembers, and Penelope, herself, a woman too, whom everyone remembers. But Penelope is here to make her own story for herself, she says to Eurydice. Eurydice appreciates that. She wants to do the same, to learn from her friend. In all friendships, there are ebbs and flows, quiet times of hot drama and action. Penelope's and Eurydice's brief tenure of friendship, there are rarely quiet moments. It is almost all hot drama and action. And this morning, before the sun could hint at a present through the gray expanse of clouds, Eurydice woke up to prayers from Orpheus. At first, Eurydice says, I thought they were weird dreams, you know? She's still licking the baklava from her fingers the way she would do in life. Penelope does not mind. She once did the same back in life when she was Eurydice's age, except royal standing and being surrounded by the hungry eyes of men stopped her from such practice. She thinks, watching Eurydice now, that she should pick it up again. So she does. Lick a little from her fingers. It tastes off, not the way she remembers. Penelope continues anyway, just for the sensation before speaking. Dreams? Were they dirty dreams, at least? Penelope asks. I know, right? I wish. I think that's what the Threads of Fate instructor was worried about when I told him about the dreams. Eurydice busies herself with a napkin before she continues, wiping both hands and mouth. But apparently no, which is kind of a relief. Anyway, apparently the dreams I'm getting are some sort of prayer. Like Orpheus is fucking praying to me. Odd, Penelope says, doing the same with her napkin because it looked like a good idea. I'd like to have some dirty dreams myself, but honestly, I'd settle for some prayers too. Too bad we killed off all the men who thought I was hot. Yeah, well, you're still hot. Even like this? Penelope pushes her hair over her shoulder. Thank you. That said, it's nice to be thought of, maybe even just a small amount. Penelope sets down her tea when she says that, lacing her fingers in front of her, brown eyes narrowed and concerned, the way she used to watch her son trying to make amends with his father so many years ago. Not really. In the dreams, he says he wants me back, that he'll do anything to get me back. But how does he expect to get down here? Penelope brushes her long, ephemeral hair from her face. We're in Hades, wrong? Does Orpheus not understand that? He can't get here unless, like, she pauses, blinks, and cleans the table off to clean the frightening thought away. No, I'm not even going to say it. It's Eurydice's turn to lean forward, and she does, with the kind of rapt energy of a woman in her 20s, the kind of way she has both a secret to share and a need to scream something profane at the top of her voice. Except she doesn't, because she's in my realm, and she knows I can hear it just fine, no matter how she says it, which is true. But Penelope, she says, what if he can?
Best and also most heart-wrenching place to stop. Well timed. Also, I was cackling through all of that. Just such a brilliant voice and take on it, and I love that they are friends.
Just very voicey and very, very well read. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Also, we were talking before the show about if any surprise cats would come, and we got one.
Dax did not show up to accompany me, so I'm glad that Guinness is there.
Aww. Right. Well, the year has certainly ending on a high note, I would say. What's ahead for our friends in the audience for 2023?
Yes, Justin expects a novel in the spring. Congratulations on that. A couple of major anniversaries for Grail. And Kari is excited that it is not 2022. I feel that.
Yeah, I feel that too. And you know, I realized that we've missed something from our solstice merriment. I'm actually gonna punt Guinness down for this one, because it would not be a complete ephemera celebration, I don't think, without a little light pyrotechnics. There we go. Yay!
I muted myself. Okay, we're gonna go gallery, say hello to our
Yeah.
fancy readers here. That is also a very nice reminder that even a small light makes a big difference against the darkness.
So to all of you, we wish you a restful and joyful end to 2022, especially rejoicing in the fact that soon it will not be 2022 any longer. Stay safe and take care of yourselves and each other.
Until next time, don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Ephemera Series. Full transparency, we're not really on Twitter much these days for reasons that you might be able to guess. We'll keep you posted, but Facebook is the best place to find us for now. And of course, you can subscribe to our YouTube page. We'd like to thank the Ontario Arts Council for their funding assistance.
And as we close out tonight, we would also like to thank our fabulous readers and performer, our composer Alex White, our families, friends, loved ones, and you. Thank you for staying with us, and here's to another great year ahead. We'll see you on January 18th, 2023, right here on YouTube.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.